From Tally to Cali,
It's time
to wake up.
Wake up!
Warchant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source.
and this is Wake Up Warchant, presented by
Vitamin energy. The vitamins.
The energy.
Now here's Warchant.com's Aslan Hajavandi.
and Corey Clark.
Wake up! It's Wake Up Warchant presented by Vitamin Energy. Coming up on today's show, the Noles pulling in dogs up front hand over fist. Can we tell whether this portal class is truly wired differently? And Corey roasts Herbie for 10-ish minutes. Wake Up Warchant presented by Vitamin Energy, vitaminenergy.com. Beat the holiday blues with the Mood Plus shot, available over there at vitaminenergy.com. 260 milligrams, all natural caffeine, vitamins, nutrients, feel good, look good, feel good. VitaminEnergy.com. Shake it and take it. Clinically tested, clinically proven. What are y'all waiting for, everybody? Hope you had a good Christmas. Warchant.com, ultimate Seminole sports source. Thumbs up, 5-star ratings, reviews, things of that nature. Tell a friend, right, Corey? Spread the gospel. Let them know what's going on in the world of Florida State sports because that's what's going on over at Warchant.com, keeping you informed. Christmas Eve news, Christmas Day news, Christmas post-Christmas Day news. We got you covered like nobody else. Again, Meat and Potatoes is over at Warchant.com. We're some entertainment for you. We being myself, Aslan, and Corey Clark. Corey Clark, Merry Christmas. Belated Merry Christmas. How are you, friend?
I'm good, buddy. Did you get any good gifts?
Several. This whole having a girlfriend thing, really cool. Really cool. Really cool.
Tell me about it. What do we get?
So
A cruise? You going on a vacation together?
nothing that opulent. Sorry, we all don't swing it around like you do, big dog.
Right. I know.
No, so I made a mention that I wanted one of those wearable fitness trackers. They make a ring, like the Aura ring it's called. She bought me that. Thing is several $100s. Very nice. She bought me a Yeti tumbler because I always joke about how I have, like I've got this. I got tested for something called Sjogren's disease because I'm always thirsty. Like I'm constantly thirsty. I don't have it, everybody. It's all right. I'm going to be fine. So she bought me a Yeti tumbler and she had my name etched on it. She also bought me this awesome Japanese chef's knife because I mentioned how I don't have like a proper, lots of cool things, Corey. Lots of cool things.
Good, man. Nice.
What'd you get for Steph? Huh?
Nothing. I let her move in with me.
Okay.
Does that count as a Christmas present? That's a gift that gives year round. That's always given. So, no, we didn't really exchange Christmas gifts. So, that's fine. That's fine. We're just here for our kids.
That's what it's all about, man. The children, everybody. I believe they're our future. Corey Clark, what is going on in Tallahassee, Florida? Since we last talked, swing and a miss by your boy here. Couldn't believe they brought Micah Pettis in for a visit because he apparently had a price tag on the internet in excess of 1 million American dollars. I'm like, well, don't feel like Florida State's in the business of offering that much money to one single player, let alone an offensive lineman. But hey, Herb Hand, Gus Malzahn, Mike Norvell, whatever order you want to put those guys in, bring the big dog on board. Pettis, 2-year starter, I think, at Ole Miss. Shout out to our guy. No, 3 years, man. Started 29 of 33 games. Shout out to our Ira Schofel. Again, Warchant.com, ultimate Seminole sports source. Great story by Ira laying out the difference in the tack, if you will, of what they've done in the transfer portal so far this year compared to what they did last year. Experience everywhere. But Pettis, a huge, huge acquisition for Florida State. That's your left tackle. And then the day after Christmas, was our guy Luke Petitbon, was he even on campus? Did he even visit? Or was he just like, I'm in, man, let's do this?
Who knows, man?
Yeah.
It's hard to keep track. So he committed on Thursday.
Yep.
That gives 4, I think. Do they have 4 offensive line transfers?
Yep.
All that have played a lot of football, like 2-year starters in the SEC. I think Petitbon was at least a 2-year starter at Wake, right, as the center?
Yeah. Hansen was a 3-year starter, I think, at Vanderbilt.
Yeah, and I think the Ole Miss kid was a 2-year starter, right? Or at least a starter for a year.
Well, he started 29 of 33 games. That's got to be 3 years worth of football.
And the other kid, UCF kid, started in the Big 12.
Adrian Medley.
So, yep. Look, man, and when you throw in Richie Leonard, who's not said anything yet, so we assume he's on the roster. I know that's a big assumption. The portal might close in a couple of days, but he's not in there yet. Apparently he's still on the roster and going to stay on the roster. I know, stop us if you've heard this before, but I think they're going to have a pretty good offensive line, Aslan.
Right,
I think they're going to have a pretty good offensive line with a whole bunch of experience. And, look, I think all of them have 1 year available to them. But, man, that shows you how dire a situation it was there. And I think more importantly, well, not more importantly, but more tellingly is, Herb Hand just didn't go and say, give me everything you got. He did, I'm sure, do some self-scouting on the guys that were on campus and what he wants, what he looks for, if they're anywhere close to the guys in the portal that they're after, and apparently no. Because it looks to me, Aslan, like he's got his center, he's got a left tackle, a right tackle, a left guard, and Richie Leonard's coming back a right guard. So, sorry, guys that have been here for a couple, 3 years at Florida State, no room for you at the end, not as a starter. Now, they need quality depth, they need backups, and who knows, their positions are always open, but it looks to me like Florida State not only went out and got a brand new offense, or a mostly new offense. We know they're all variables of the same variants of the same thing, and Malzahn and Norvell have a history together. They went and got a new offensive coordinator, a new offensive line coach, and a brand new starting offensive line. So that's a good Christmas present, I think, for most people listening to this, right?
Starting quarterback too, as well. Corey, I don't think you were going down one way or the other there, like an avenue of discourse, but yeah. I'm excited for the fact that they've totally hit reset on this, right? Like, I don't think anybody in their right mind spent more than a millisecond thinking to themselves, well, golly, they found themselves in this position. They did such, criticize this team all you want in dark corners of the internet or your personal text messages. But I think if you got a broad platform like us, or if you're going to be on social media with a very visible, opinion throwing around there, like I get it. They had to go to this level of recruiting because they didn't hit on guys prior. But I'm not even worried. That's not a storyline to me at all. The fact that they went and got such productive guys from such high levels of football, that's like the huge thing to me, because you needed that completely reimagined, and they haven't stopped anything short of that. So that's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, they had to do it. I mean, you 2-10, you don't just stand pat. You don't just stand pat with your players. You need better players, and it kind of shows you, I think, maybe where the recruiting / development / evaluation had been the last few years up front, that your new offensive line coach, who we all respect because he's been doing it for 20 years at a very high level, looks at what he's got and is like, yeah, none of this. I need a lot. I need a whole starting group. Let's go. These guys might end up being something next year, but this year, for this time, we need guys that have proven themselves. We need real grown-ups that have played big boy football, and they went and got them. So yeah, I think that's they had to. Like, we can relitigate what happened. Well, we don't need to.
I don't think that's the thing. I don't think it's that's.
Yeah,
not
we all understand it, right? Yeah. Like it was a
storyline for the last 3 months, right? It's done now. It's been
the cupboard was apparently quite bare. At least they thought. And not even bare, it's like not ready to bear fruit anyway. Maybe there's some trees out in the backyard that might be bountiful one day, but they're not ready to bear fruit. Well, man, when you go 2-10, you better be bearing a whole hell of a lot of fruit the very next year when you're at a place like Florida State. And that was the mission. I think that, there's always injuries. Health always plays into it, especially on the offensive line. But you look at this starting five and the experience that they've added and the size. You can't, and the fact that Herb Hand kind of hand-picked them for a pun. There's a pun for you.
Look at this guy.
They were hand-picked. That I think that should give you a lot of hope that Herb Hand knows what he's doing and knows what he's looking for. And he went and got some guys that some other schools really wanted, some really experienced guys. And I don't think you can't help but be encouraged by what they did on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, again, Pettis apparently had an offer in a huge ballpark from a team in the Big 12, which everybody assumed to be Texas Tech. I think Gunnar Hansen, Kentucky was trying to bring him on for a visit. Medley's maybe the one guy that I don't know just how highly sought after he was, but he's played for Herb Hand and Gus Malzahn for a number of years, so that's obviously a really good fit. And then Pettibon, which I'm like, man, that's a very familiar name in football circles. He's got to be related to Richie Pettibon. He is. That's his grandfather, Richie Pettibon. Maybe the older folk know, Corey, but Washington football team, not when they were the football team, but back in the 80s and early 90s was their defensive coordinator. That's his grandpa. So good stock, good pedigree from Luke Pettibon, who came in from Wake Forest. Again, started so much football. And listen, Wake, I don't know. I wonder how much of it is, what is different then, Corey? I mean, this is something I probably should have mapped out before we did the show here, but you joked about like, hey, stop us if you heard this one before. Florida State is going to feel, you should feel really good as a Florida State fan about where your offensive line is going to be. Is there anything we don't want the through line to last year? Is there anything different it feels about these guys on the surface versus what there was last year that we were lauding before they took the football field? Or should we kind of wait until we see some spring football practices and the way this thing looks before totally diving head over heels into the Kool-Aid?
Well, no, look, man, I don't know that the Hansen kid, right, the Vanderbilt tackle, look, if you're an incredible offensive lineman, if you're an NFL-type offensive lineman, like a first or second round pick, you're probably not playing your fifth or sixth year of college football. So understand that going in. But last year, Darius Washington, Maurice Smith, Jeremiah Byers, Robert Scott, those guys were 23 years old and not in the league either. I think the difference is these guys had better years than any of those guys had probably in 2023 as well, except for Darius. And I just think, I think Pettis is better than anyone they've had. But that's just one guy. You need more guys. I like the fact. Look, man, Maurice Smith, God love him. He was not a competent center by the end of his career. And I don't mean competent like he didn't know what he was doing. He just wasn't good. I don't even think he was solid. He was just a guy that played a lot of football that was really beat up, and they didn't have anybody better than him. You know what I mean? Like, it's not his fault. He was legitimately beat up. His body took a beating, and he just wasn't a good line. He wasn't even an average center, in my opinion. I don't think Darius Washington. I guess he had some nice games. He wasn't anything special at left tackle. Robert Scott didn't play, and we all know what Byers was. So I feel like this group of guys, I think going into last year, we kind of fell hook, line, and sinker for Norvell talking about Darius being an All-American candidate at left tackle.
Oh yeah.
That was on us. That's our bad. We fell for that. Then also we fell for, thinking that, okay, Maurice and Jeremiah and Robert Scott, if they're healthy, well, they weren't healthy. Byers might have been. Well, he wasn't even healthy. He missed a month. If they're healthy, they're going to be good. Richie Leonard is better than Casey Roddick was. Yeah, he was. But then T.J. Ferguson wasn't. Keandre Jones, nope. They weren't established Power 4 college football starting offensive linemen. Darius Washington was. Maurice Smith had been. And also maybe they weren't getting developed and coached that well. So I'm not going to put all the onus on them. But these guys, you got a guy coming from Ole Miss. You got a guy coming from Vandy. You got a guy coming from Wake. And you got a guy coming from UCF who's probably the least heralded of these guys. But as you mentioned, Herb Hand coached him. So he knows what he's getting. And, the reality is, I think, in this offense, you don't need a dominant offensive line. You need a decent to good offensive line. And you hope your decided schematic advantage will be enough, and plus you have a quarterback that can really run, that you will open up a huge running game and huge running lanes if these guys are just pretty good. Well, don't you think, by and large, you tick the boxes on these guys, and you're like, yeah, pretty good, maybe really good in Pettis, but these other guys are pretty good. They were able to start multiple years in big boy conferences. They were not backups like Ferguson was. They were not, you took a run on a Casey Roddick, who was playing for a horrible Colorado team. Like, you know what I mean? These guys, and Byers played at UTEP. Yep. These guys have proven their wares in the best conferences in America. So I think it's a good sign. But yeah, I understand. Be cautiously optimistic. Don't go head over heels thinking this is going to be, the best, the mid-90s Cowboys. This isn't going to be on par with like Georgia or Ohio State, probably. I mean, Ohio State's offensive line isn't that good. You guys get the point. It's not going to be that good, but it should be, right, Aslan? It should be, as we sit here in late December. I don't know.
There's no choice but it not to be.
50% better than it was last year. 100% better than it was not last year. Like, it's going to be hopefully exponentially better than it was last year. So you go from horrible to decent. If you can go from horrible to decent, well, that's 4-5 more wins right there. And then maybe you get some skill guys that have some really special seasons, and it can turn into a special season. But the offensive line, I think, is going to be competent. It's not going to be a nightmare like it was this past year.
It's kind of easy to go from terrible to good. You know what's really difficult is being excellent and maintaining that for 18 years.
Right.
That's what they do over at the Corner Pocket Bar and Grill in Tallahassee, Florida. cptallybar.com, the website, 2475 Appalachia Parkway. Is New Year's Eve Tuesday?
Yeah, right. I think. Yeah, I think so.
Man, everybody get your trivia hats. Get your trivia pencils sharpened
question.
up after you come back from the holiday break.
I don't think they're going to have trivia, but they will be open.
Well, I mean,
so,
I'm talking about like you got time, everybody, to get your trivia teams in order.
Right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. But they will be open. Corner Pocket is open on New Year's Eve. I think Bill even has some champagne handy. So be there, have a great time, ring in the new year at Corner Pocket.
Look at that. Corey Clark told you. Anything I say is completely irrelevant at this point. cptallybar.com, the website, 2475 Appalachia Parkway, Corner Pocket Bar and Grill. We're back. It's Wake Up Warchant, presented by Vitamin Energy, vitaminenergy.com. I'm going to throw a curveball at you here, Corey. Super excited about what they've done on the offensive line. And you mentioned that, I know Hanson's only got 1 year. Pettibon's only got 1 year. Not 100% sure on Medley and Pettis off the rip, but I'm pretty sure they've got 1 year remaining as well. So how does that factor in to the, I don't want to say the C word again here, but the chemistry or leadership vacuum the team is going to be? Because, again, listen, give me dogs. Give me horses. Give me talented football players. Give me a shrewd, seasoned, battle-tested coaching staff. You've got that in Herb Hand and Gus Malzahn and Tony White and Tim Harris Jr. and Terrence Knighton. And I really like these pieces they've brought in. But how does this all work out to its optimal sort of capacity that we think about here? Does one guy kind of take the reins? Is it going to have to be? Is Thomas Castellanos going to have to be the guy that keeps this entire thing on track? Is it going to be kind of leadership by, committee? How do you see this working, configuring cleanly, smoothly as soon as they hit the football field, whether it's for, tour of duty drills or spring football once we get to March?
No idea. Great question. Fair question. No idea. I do think that stuff matters. I'm not going to dismiss it completely. I also don't know that it matters that much when you're coming off 2-10. You just need better players. They've gone and done that. They've replenished the offensive line with real college football players. Not saying the guys that were here earlier aren't. You don't know about the backups, though. Like, name a backup. Name a sophomore Florida State offensive lineman. We don't know if they can play, any of them. But we know this quintet can play. So that's good to go into a season knowing that. Now, how they interact with each other, they played so much football, you think they'd be able to communicate well. One of the complaints we had about those guys I mentioned, other than Byers, they were all very quiet. Washington Smith, Robert Scott, not the loudest personalities in the world. It would be nice if one of these guys came in and was a loud personality. I think the fact that the whole team looks like it will be, at least the whole starting offense, looks like it'll be new players. I think there's a vacuum for a leader like that, and I think it's easier to step in, right? Number one, when you're coming off 2-10, it's easier to step in than these guys had last year when they're joining a team that just went 13-0. You're joining a team that was terrible. So you certainly can take the reins if you want, if that's your personality. But also, there's no established leaders. None. Which is a blessing and a curse, but the blessing is that, it's available. Whoever wants that job, go take it. And you hope at least one or two of these guys has that mindset. And I brought this up before, but there are times, man, and it's something I always noticed. Like, it's like, I don't know, man. It's like it's the polar opposite of what we saw at Florida State, but because it seems so robotic at times. You do your block, you do your job, you might get yards, you might not. You pick up your quarterback, you go on to the next play. Very rarely did you see offensive linemen showing emotion, ever, with that crew that we were just talking about.
They were flashing first downs all Saturday night against the Gators. I remember Jacob Rizzi and Jeremiah Byers started doing that. Yeah,
perfect. I liked it. And they had like 22 first downs in that game.
Did they?
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. Aslan, they had 22 first downs and like 238 total yards It was the most inefficient 22 first down game probably in Florida State history, or 21 They had a bunch of first downs and not a lot of yards. But the point being, yeah, Byers was a guy. Maybe Rizzi is a guy too. But you'll watch some of these other games and you'll see an offensive lineman talking mad junk to somebody he's blocking, or signaling first down, like we said, pile driving someone and talking to him, dapping up his teammate after a big block, going after a big run, going and celebrating, all that stuff that just it seemed missing. And it only seems missing when I see other teams do it. And I'm like, oh yeah, look at that. How many times did we see Maurice Smith like just go high five Darius after a big block and then go talk smack to the guy he just blocked? No. Almost never.
They stopped dapping each other up too, I feel like. Remember
you're right. They would dap up before.
Thing?
Yeah, they would dap up before the play. Yeah. So they just need some of that, I think, personally. But more than anything, they just need to be coached well and know what they're doing. You know, that's the bigger thing. If none of those guys say a peep for the whole season, well, that would be disappointing and a little bit concerning. If they're doing their job well, it ain't going to matter. Let Castellanos and Deuce talk. Or I'm never going to know his name until he scores his first touchdown. The freshman running back that's coming in. Let them do all the man, Croma. That's my dog. Let them talk if these linemen just want to be quiet. But I do like a little nasty streak. I gave Dylan Gibbons some grief, and it was well deserved because it cost them a first down and maybe eventually a W in that 2022 NC State game because he got a personal foul after the whistle that took away a first down while NC State was making their run. But, man, he was getting personal fouls for being too aggressive. You need some of that, man.
You'd rather tell your guys, whoa, than giddy up?
Yeah, somebody said that once, right? Yeah. You'd rather kick him in the ass than you'd rather get a good look at a butcher's ass. Nah, I can't remember how it goes. But is that from Tommy Boy, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, good. You were supposed to laugh. Now nobody's gonna know what I was saying. Anyway.
Well, you can get a good look up a cow's blank, or you can take the butcher's word for it.
Yeah, there you go. But then Tommy Boy kept screwing it up. You can get a good look up a butcher's butt. Anyway. I have derailed, much like Tommy Boy did when he was trying to sell those brake pads.
Callahan brake pads, kids.
Yeah, that's right. I would love to see that. I would love to see just some aggression, just some nastiness, man. Just some nastiness. I know maybe they weren't good enough to have aggression and to be nasty and talk noise because they were horrible and they couldn't run the ball. But, man, I just think mindset is such a big part of it. And I would like that one or two of all of these guys to be like almost madmen, like animals out there. And we'll see it in spring, right? We won't get to see it to the full extent because they won't tackle and all that. But we'll know. I think we'll get a good handle on these guys' personalities, coaches and the linemen, within the first week, right? At least when they start going in shells and going pads on pads. I just want to see what these guys are made of.
Is it part of a coach's job, Corey, to leadership needs to be something that's earned like organically? I think so much of it is obviously through the course of practices, mini camps, full seasons of going through all this stuff. I mean, so much of probably what made 23 great was, this team having an incredible start to 22 and then losing 3 games in the middle of the season and kind of getting derailed, but then getting themselves back off the mat and finishing so strong. I mean, so much of that I think really does help propel you into the future. But Herb Hand's coached a lot of guys, a lot of different guys, lots of different conferences that he's been in. Same thing with Gus. Mike's going to have bandwidth freed up to do all sorts of different things he probably never even really imagined when he took this job 5 years ago. Can Herb Hand have a feel in that room and pull Luke aside, let's say, the center or whatever, just be like, hey, man, you're it, Luke. You're the guy. I can feel your energy. These guys, when you speak up, your voice carries in this room. We need you to be the guy that's going to hold everybody in this room accountable. Not to say that everybody else can't chip in their own way and you're not on them and trying to keep them accountable as well because you're a coach. You have to do that. But is it possible for the coaches to really help form? It feels like in this sort of situation, again, everything is going to be brand new. I mean, your offensive line is going to be totally new quarterback. It probably would help if one of these guys was kind of given the green light to be the guy that leads this team, or is that just something that doesn't kind of maybe add up within the course of coaching a football team, you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something you think about, but it's not the first thing you think about. I think it's something, and you remember because Norvell, I feel like Norvell brought this up in August, back when he was telling us we all thought they were going to be good, and he was telling us he thought they were going to be good. He did. I feel like he did bring up the leadership void, and he didn't know who were going to be those guys. And it turned out there weren't many or any. So I do think it's something that matters, but I don't know if it's something you're looking at right now or you're looking at in the spring. I also think when it comes to specifically the offensive line, Herb Hand's been doing it. He's like in his 50s, right? But these guys have all played. They're in their 20s, like 22. They played a lot of football. Some of them played, like the Hanson kids played 40 games. I like that you got a kid from Vanderbilt and a kid from Wake. You feel like those guys have had paths to be an offensive lineman at Vanderbilt or Wake. You got to be a little bit tough-minded and thick-skinned because those aren't football powerhouses. These aren't guys that have had flowers thrown at them their whole lives. I'm completely stereotyping. I'm just assuming a 3-year starter at Vanderbilt and a 3 or 2-year starter at Wake Forest, those aren't football powerhouses where they were like top 100 players in the country. They kind of had to work for everything, which is one of the beauties of schools like that. And also, you're not blessed with a ton of talent around you. But I feel like these guys have had a different college football experience than, let's say, I'm not trying to pick on the kid, a guy that was a 5-star that went to Alabama.
Or Deuce, even Deuce Ramos. Or do you think SC
hasn't
had a lot of great success?
But it's also different because I think wide receivers are different than offensive line. Yeah, I mean, Deuce was recruited by everyone. These guys, I can't imagine the Vandy kid and the Wake kid or even the UCF kid were recruited at that high level, but they played their way into a position at Florida State, which good for them. But they come with a little different mindset than maybe a kid that was at Alabama for a year or two, or a kid that joined Florida State when they were on the up and up, and they were being recruited by all these guys. I think they have a different perspective on life and on college football, and so I would think they would understand how much that matters. Now, I don't think they're going to not dog cuss their new teammates, but I think they understand there needs to be a firm voice in the huddle, not that any team's huddle anymore, a firm voice on the sidelines, a firm voice in the meeting rooms, and not just coming from the coach. And so, again, all that stuff is stuff I want to see, and I'm genuinely interested in these guys' personalities. The beauty about Florida State, as I talk about all the time, we will get to talk to these kids at some point, probably at the turn of the year. All these new transfers will be made available, including Castellanos, and we'll be able to talk to them. So we'll get a little bit better feel for who they are, but you don't really know until you see them practicing. And I just want to see if some of – and I got to imagine, man, you fought to be at Florida State after going through Wake and Vanderbilt and UCF, man, you fought through some stuff. Like you're a different kind of cat, in my opinion. And so you do have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder. And you've proven a lot of people wrong, I would assume. To get to this point, none of these coaches thought they were good enough 3 or 4 years ago when they were in high school, but now they've proven they are, but I bet they still have that chip on their shoulder. I bet they still play, hopefully, a little angry. And that would be nice.
Again, shout out to Ira, great story over on warchant.com, laying it bare for everybody, Corey, just how different this recruiting cycle is transfer-wise versus what happened last year in terms of what they produced, how much they've produced before they came here. And what I do think about, though, is it's pretty much an apples to oranges kind of comparison to what they have now to what they brought in last year, just because, again, these guys they've started at high-level programs, Power 4 programs, and they've been very productive. How much of it, though, you talk about chip on the shoulder, if you arrived in Tallahassee on December 29th, 2023, it was a much different, and I don't want to get into the snub, but just I felt like you felt you arrived, right? Like you're like, I mean, I'm at this program, 2 years in a row of steady growth, or I mean, if you really want to look at it, they increased their win total every single year in Mike Norvell's first 4 seasons. So you're like, man, this thing is building. This thing is a rocket ship. This is a great program, great brand. I can't play iconic brand. I'm not at my house in Tallahassee. Sorry, everybody. But you kind of arrive here maybe a little bit feeling yourself, maybe a little bit more than you should, as opposed to like, all right, I need to either help maintain this thing or build it back up. You're arriving here and it's like, man, like, I made it. This place is going to, it's the whole JFK, like, ask not what you can do for your country or whatever it goes. Speaking of screwing up quotes, you know how it goes, everybody.
It's the head up the butcher's
There we go.
Sorry.
There we go. Thanks, buddy.
But I think that's how he finished it.
I just feel like most of the guys that probably arrived here last year really weren't thinking about, all right, man, like I'm here to put Florida State, I'm here to cement the legacy of this program being back. Whereas, like, man, if you're showing up now, and listen, it's still a great place to be. There's so much to offer an 18, 19, 21, 22, 23-year-old. But, man, you're coming here at a low point, right? Worst season in 50 years, literally finished last in the conference. There has to be a different kind of energy. And so much of it is obviously going to be the coaching, Corey. But I think there has to be a level of buy-in, or just if your desire to come to Florida State, if you're all in for it now, man, you're probably programmed a little bit differently than the guy that's like, all right, I want to jump on this thing that's hitting its stride at full peak, So that's another thing too that's going to be hard to maybe quantify, but definitely has to be something in the mix once we finally see them get on the field, or maybe start talking to some of these new guys once they show up. Maybe there'll be some words they say or some inflection that we'll get from them that makes us feel that they have the right sort of mindset for what they've been brought here to do.
Yeah, and that's a good point. That's an astute point. I do think you're joining a program. Even in 1 year, you're joining a much different program, a one that's been kicked in the mud essentially for a full year, for a full calendar year, and you're coming here to try to clean the mud off. Now, the only it's not pushback. The only counter I would have to that is yes, I think it does say something about those kids, unless they just got thrown huge bags at them. Like, we don't know what they're
fair.
But that is something that comes in. Like, the Pettis kid might just, or I'm not even going to say a name. One of these kids or all of these kids might just be straight mercenaries. I'm going to go who pays me the most, which most of us do in life, honestly. So I'm not judging them for it, but it might be more to that. I think the bigger point, and the one you were referencing to with Ira, and I do think that matters, though. They're not coming in thinking they're not coming into a program that's on the mountaintop. They're coming to a program that's in the mud. They know it's going to be hard. It would be nice if after this ascension, whatever happens in the next 2 years, they can stay around the mountaintop. Florida State doesn't have to keep falling into a pit of despair to see which ones are the real ones. You know what I'm saying? Like, we need some real ones that are here for the right things. Well, how about just staying pretty good for the rest of our lives, Mike? That would be awesome. We don't ever need to see 2-10 again. It's pathetic. It was abysmal. Let's not ever do that again. Let's never even talk about it again. But so that's a good point. They are joining a program like Deuce Robinson. He could have gone to a lot of places. I know he's a legacy, but he's coming here. To make a difference, to score touchdowns for his dad's alma mater. I'm sure he got rewarded handsomely financially, but he could have been rewarded financially at other places. So it's a fair point what you're making. I think the better point, though, when it comes to Florida State and what they were looking for this cycle, is the one you talked about that Ira wrote about. And they're not done in the portal, I don't think, but what do they have, 11 guys out of the portal? And Ira said at least eight are like multi-year starters.
Correct.
At their other schools. They're not taking any flyers on a Sean Murphy, Sean Murphy just committed to somewhere, didn't he?
Good program, too, if I'm not mistaken. Let me check. I don't know exactly.
Illinois, maybe?
No, was it?
No, maybe it's not. No, you're right. I don't know where he went.
Yeah,
it wasn't
an SEC program. I'm like,
you're
dang,
right.
They're going to give this kid another chance.
Kentucky, maybe? It was surprising where he
went. South Carolina.
Yeah, there you go. All right. It's, South Carolina, Florida State. What a rivalry this is. I think Florida State still won by and large with Jamie and Jaheim and Keir Thomas, but still.
They got the Kyle Kennard guy. We could have used him.
Yeah, but he didn't come from Florida State. I'm talking about the pipelines that go both ways. They got Gilbert Edmond back, and then Sean Murphy. But Cam Riley, Sean Murphy, T.J. Ferguson, guys that were Jaylen Brown. Guys that had a lot of stars or hype coming out of high school, but they hadn't done it at the next level, really never done anything at the college level. Cam Riley had started some, but they hadn't really done a whole lot. Meanwhile, now you're getting guys, what you have. Like, you're getting real guys, and that seems like an absolute 100% about face in the way they recruited in the portal this year. They're not taking flyers on guys that might be good, might pan out. They're taking flyers on guys that have panned out. They know what they're getting, which is much more like what they did 2-3 years ago. It kind of reminds me, not really, but I'm going to go ahead and say this anyway. I know back in like the early 2000s, Florida State was so good, they were the best program in the country, that literally they could get anybody they wanted in the country, almost. They could go to California and get quarterbacks and receivers and DBs and running backs. They could go anywhere they want. And so they started kind of recruiting more nationally than they needed to. Like, yeah, oh, he's interested? Well, let's get him. Oh, he's interested? Let's get him. And kind of maybe not ignoring, and this is way too, I'm being way too vague, not vague, but broad with these statements. They didn't maybe concentrate on the bloodline of the team, which was in the state of Florida. They went all over the country because they could, and it was fun. But go get the best players in Florida. You don't have to worry about go getting a DB or a running back from California or Texas. No, go get a couple, sure. But it seemed like and I feel like after the 13-0 and after winning 19 straight games, it's like, oh, man, we could go get an Alabama kid. Nobody from Alabama was interested in Florida State in 2021. Now, all of a sudden, guys that aren't playing at all at Alabama are playing very sparingly. Like, that looks like a fun, let me go there. And I think you're getting a different kind of kid. And so I think now they completely did an about-face. Like, no, we're not going for hype or potential. We're going for absolute production, proven production. And I don't remember all the transfers, Aslan. Is there anybody they're bringing in so far as a transfer that hasn't produced greatly at the college level? I don't have the list in front of me. Like, I know the tight end from UCF has played a lot. Obviously, Castellanos has played a lot. Deuce has played a lot.
I got the list for you. So, Castellanos, Pettis, Gunnar Hansen, Adrian Medley, Luke Pettibon.
All starters.
Yeah. Randy Pittman started 11 of 25 games at UCF.
Yep, starter.
Deuce only started 5 of 23, but receiver.
He counts, right? Yeah. He produced, man.
He's caught 40 passes in 2 years.
Yeah, he's a starter. He's got 7 or 8 touchdowns. In big games, he caught a touchdown against Penn State. He is a established football player. Deontay
McCray, which, by the way, a lot of people were upset that we weren't head over heels about him. He's an edge setter, Corey, so we were grading him as a pass rusher, but that's not his role. He's an edge setter, bigger dude. But, yeah, he's started nearly 20 games at Western Kentucky. Stephon Thompson from Nebraska. Was at Syracuse with Tony White. Played a whole bunch of football. James Williams, maybe not as much, but at least, showed you he can do one thing and can do it pretty darn well.
And James Williams might be the most have the most top end potential of any of the guys they brought in, right? Like, I don't think he's been unleashed that much. When you look at his pass rush rate and pressure rate, considered how many snaps he was on the field, he looks like I know he doesn't. I guess he didn't start at Nebraska,
correct?
But he played a lot, and he was second on their team in quarterback pressures. So again, is that it? Is that the list?
And then Biscuit.
Oh, well, heck, even Biscuit. I think Biscuit caught a touchdown against Oklahoma in the Champs Bowl. He's done it, too. He's lived that life.
Cheez-It Bowl. Come on, Cheez-It Bowl.
Yeah, what did I say?
Champs Bowl.
Yeah, sorry, it's my bad, Cheez-Its. Is it still called the Cheez-It Bowl?
I woke up feeling the cheesiest coach.
The cheesiest coach. I don't know why. That makes me laugh all the time. That one?
It's good.
And the caveman Geico where he's like, we don't pass, Tina. Yeah. That one makes me laugh all the time. I can't, and I've seen it 100 times.
She's like, "Where we honeymooned at?" He's like, "Mallorca." The way he says Mallorca makes me laugh.
And she's like, "Pass." He's like, "We don't pass, Tina." That's a really funny commercial. Geico, man, they do it up. Other than I'm not a big fan of Flo, but the other things they've done have always been pretty, especially with the caveman.
Well, the progressive "Don't be your parents" thing
is that
really good?
Yeah, that's the best one. Yeah. I like. It's weird that they have a guy so old giving the advice, but he's really good at it. And I shouldn't say old; he's probably my age. I'm just saying you would have thought it'd be a younger actor, but yeah, that's a really good one too. But that's it. So all 11 of those transfers, all of them, have played a lot of college football and produced, even counting Biscuit. That is a wild leap from Malik Benson. I know he played at Alabama. What do you have? 13 catches. And then you had Ferguson, didn't play much. Jaylen Brown didn't play much. Jalen Lucas played some, and he got hurt. I'm not going to even throw him in there.
Tomiwa. Yeah,
Yeah, guys like that. Who was the other lineman? So Richie Leonard did play a lot, and he ended up being the best guy they brought in on that side of the ball, probably. Yeah. Right?
Right. Rizzy and T.J. Ferguson were the other offensive linemen. And Rizzy, they didn't deploy him until they absolutely were like on their last wing and a prayer in November.
Yeah, and then Sean Murphy, Cam Riley,
Devontae Brown.
Yeah,
Duke
guys
Cooper.
And Duke and Devontae. Devontae had played. Duke had played here at Florida State, but he didn't. He wasn't very good at Colorado, and so anyway, I just think they went and got guys that produced in 2024. Like went and got guys that played football in 2024 and played at a pretty high level. It was like that was the edict. It's like no. I don't care that he was a top 50 player in 2021. What has he done in college? And yes, and then they went and got those answers. Even the kid at Western Kentucky that I guess we poo-pooed too much. Sure, he's an edge setter. I hope he sets that edge really, really well. 3-3-5, that's a different type of defense. So maybe that will be his role, and he'll be very good at it. He has not looked to be like an all-world, very twitchy type defensive end, but you don't need those guys. You do need pieces. But he's played a ton of football.
Correct.
You know, he's not going to be an all-conference guy. They're not all going to be all-conference guys. But I feel like, don't you think – we just named 11 guys. Don't you think we just named 10 starters?
Yeah,
maybe Pittman doesn't start because
we'll see what James Williams
Logan Thomas.
James Williams, I don't mean to say it like as a pejorative, like one-trick pony, but he was a pass rusher. Like that was his thing. Like third down, that was it. I don't know if they want to develop him into a three-down kind of guy. Or they want to just use him as like that kind of special piece in those situations. But that's semantics in terms of like who's starting. He, as you said, either not hitting their ceilings yet, although I think like Deuce is really enticing too in terms of like how good we think he possibly could be.
Yep.
Man, James Williams, he might be able to make more impact in those 15 snaps, at least like tangibly that we'll see. I mean, I don't want to compare him to an offensive line, but he can wreck drives. You know, he can give you really good field position because the team goes 3 and out and they lost 6 yards on third down because he came off the edge and got a sack. Flips field position, you guys short field and you score a touch. I mean, he's a very intriguing prospect.
Yeah, but I don't think he's going to play more than 15 snaps. I think they didn't bring him to do that. Well, I don't think he's just going to be a third down specialist. I think they're going to try to morph him into an every down player that at least gets double the snaps he got in Nebraska, maybe more. And quite frankly, they need it because as happy and as excited we are as the offensive line, and we know the offense is going to be much, much better, right? It can't not be. Even if it doubles its point total from last year, it's still just average. So we know it's going to be a much better offense. I don't know that yet about the defense. You know, I don't. Like I talked about last week, there might have been some addition by subtraction, but you've lost some talented football players, and right now I'm still not in love with the defensive line. Williams I like that we talked about. Obviously getting Darrell Jackson back is nice. The Western Kentucky kid has played a lot of football. I'm still wanting a little more from that side. And I don't know how good the defense is going to be. I don't think they've made nearly the upgrades roster-wise as the offensive side of the ball has made quite yet. But also, they probably had better players over there already than the offense did. We all watched the offense have the worst season imaginable. The defense wasn't good. It wasn't historically bad, though. So, again, you have some secondary guys that are coming back. You have some linebackers that played a lot. We think Cryer and Nicholson, I do anyway, think they can both be maybe good college football players, but certainly solid. They played a lot of football the past year. You got a linebacker from a really experienced linebacker from Nebraska and Syracuse that's going to play a lot.
Productive. Not just experienced, productive.
Yeah. Yes. So I think you like some of the pieces there. I don't know that they've made the upgrades that the offense has made, but they also haven't needed to. They don't need to make that big up. I mean, they do. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying the offense was so bad. It's like you have to attack that first. The offensive line was a disaster. The offense in general was I don't even know how to describe it. I've run out of adjectives. But they needed to make some serious upgrades. And they have. In the coaching staff, in my opinion, and then also on the roster. So now, you know, I would think they've taken 11. I mean, wouldn't you think, Aslan, they got 9 or 10 more to go, right? Until August, until June, whenever that portal window closes in June.
It's never going to close. It's closing for everybody who didn't play in a bowl game pretty much. Now you got the playoff guys that are going to be playing. I mean, anybody that's playing in a bowl game, like they can still jump in because they're on a different clock, I think, than anybody else. Right. And then if your coach ends up deciding to quit at the I mean, it's bizarre. I mean, I think this season is going to create all kinds of changes that we've all been clamoring for sooner rather than later. A couple of things I want to almost circle back to, but let's move ahead in terms of things that we want to see change. And I think maybe playoff seeding, that's one thing that might change. Giving these conference champs buys doesn't look all that great on paper as we go into the quarterfinal round of the college football playoff. But I know you had, we mentioned a little bit on the previous show, but Ira tasked you with writing a column about, I think Florida State fans, by and large, I don't think they needed to feel vindicated, but it did feel like, at least after the first month, right? Like after January of this past year, most people were like, okay, we get it. You guys got screwed. We do feel bad for you, but you're going to have to move on.
Right.
And a lot of Florida State fans are like, screw you. Imagine what we went through and then get back to me about it. And what Kirk Herbstreit apparently has done here in the last, 5 days, 6 days, man, whatever Florida State fans did to wear his psyche out, now it feels like the college football public at large feels the same kind of disappointment or angst towards him. What went into your column that you put on warchant.com that maybe you didn't fully express when you did the podcast segment earlier in the week, rather?
Yeah, and I'll keep it brief because I know Jeff and Tom basically had an whole hour about it today, and then I wrote a column about it, and I talked about it in our last show. Just that it was like people coming around to Florida State's Seminoles way of thinking, fans' way of thinking, and it wasn't like, isn't Kirk an awful guy? Doesn't he suck? Don't you wish he'd quit? It's like, can't you guys see what's happening? Can't you see what's going on? And it's like, I think I brought up this comparison, and it's not near. I don't even want to do it. I'm going to do it, but I'm doing it hesitant. I'm doing it against my better judgment. But if there was a really good story that was written after the lead up, after the Gulf War in 2003.
First one or the second one?
The second one, when they actually got Saddam out of there. And
we got him.
And all those generals that came on, all those retired military leaders that came on to CNN, I shouldn't say all of them, but many of them that would go on 60 Minutes or CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, that were talking about why they should go to war and why it was important to get Saddam Hussein out. Well, they were all getting talking orders from the Pentagon. There's a really good story. Google it. It's really fascinating. It's really well done. It's great journalism, even for people that don't believe in good journalism anymore. This was also 15 years ago. It's really well done. And it's like, obviously, this is not anywhere close to as important as that. It's not as important as human lives. I got it. That I shouldn't even have to say that, but I did, just to cover all my bases. But it reminds me of, like, I think people can see now that Kirk Herbstreit is working for other people. He doesn't have the best interest of the sport at heart. I don't think. He doesn't have the best interest of all the other colleges and programs at heart. He's looking out for one conference, which is weird because he's a Big Ten guy. But it seems obvious now. And the point being, I think that Florida State fans were like, see Big Ten, see Indiana, see SMU. We never thought y'all would be in a playoff conversation, but isn't this fun to be part of this now, where you are completely dismissed because you might lose to a 9-3 Ole Miss team? And so I think more people are coming to the realization that Kirk Herbstreit and ESPN are bad for football the way they're currently constructed for college football. You know what I mean? Like I mentioned the awful announcing article where the guy wrote, I can't remember his name, Matt Soder maybe. Apologies, I should know your name. I'm a fellow writer. I should remember that, but I don't. But the headline was, college football, the ESPN made the first weekend of the college football playoff a miserable negative experience. And it was, because all they did, McDonough at the end of the Notre Dame game, Kirk Herbstreit multiple times, Saban every time he's on, all they're talking about is why these teams are in and how other teams should have been in. And it's like, that's not what this is about. As the awful announcing writer pointed out, once the NCAA basketball tournament starts, you just cheer for the Cinderella. And if North Carolina beats Mount St. Mary's by 31 points, you're not like, well, what the hell's Mount St. Mary's doing here? They're there. It's just the tournament. People win, people lose. Favorites usually win. Home favorites usually win. That's what happened in the first weekend. But when Indiana loses or SMU loses on the road to better teams, it's a referendum on their seasons. As if there is a guarantee that Ole Miss would have stayed within 20 or Ole Miss would have won. It's just dumb. It's just dumb. Just like, let us enjoy the sport. But it's there is them only getting 3 teams in. really irked Greg Sankey, which apparently that message was trickled down to the people that need to do it. And I fully believe I wasn't all the way on board last year. I am fully on board that Kirk Herbstreit is a mouthpiece for that conference. And I feel like the rest of the country is understanding that too, because it wasn't just irate, irrational Florida State fans or media. It was national media. It was Nicole Auerbach. It was Stuart Mandel. It was Awful Announcing. It was anybody and everybody that
Dan
really
Wolken. I think even people are like championing Dan Wolken. You know that the tides change when that's going down.
But it's like people that really do care and like the sport and don't have a vested interest in who plays for the playoff. They know that this is nonsense, and this is just how sports works. Teams lose all the time. Sometimes they lose badly when they play better teams, but that doesn't mean they didn't deserve to be in the playoff. And so I think that veil was finally ripped off completely, and people see what it is. Now maybe he can earn it back. He can earn our respect back and our trust back by quit talking about how good a 3 or 4 or just that Indiana didn't belong or they didn't belong on the field, and then not saying anything about Tennessee. That was, I think, the big. But again, here I go talking about Herbstreit again. It's over. It's done with. The snub will never go away. I feel like what happened this year, though, in the way they talked about the teams that made it, just gives more credence to Florida State's paranoia. Florida State fans' paranoia about 2023. See, they all they care about is the SEC. That's all they want. That's all they want is more SEC teams. That's all they want. I mean, a college football quarterback, which Kirk Herbstreit was, and not a very good one by comparison to, like, NFL players. He started at Ohio State, so he's better than 99% of us, but not a great college quarterback. He's sitting there talking about how a one-loss team in the Big Ten didn't deserve to be on the field with Notre Dame, the conference he played in. And their only loss was to his alma mater. By the way, his alma mater lost to Michigan, who lost to Indiana. But none of that is brought up because, oh, no, Ole Miss is sitting out. Ole Miss, who's done so much for this sport over the last century. Would there even be college football, Aslan, without the great teams of Ole Miss from yesteryear?
Houston Nutt did a lot for the game.
He really did, right? Him and
Tommy Tuberville.
Cutcliffe.
Yeah.
Don't forget Eli's great run in Oxford. I think they got to a couple of bowls when he was there.
They've got like an SEC West banner in the stadium, but they didn't actually play on the SEC championship game.
Yeah, have they ever played in an SEC championship game? They must have.
I don't think so.
I mean, good Lord. And we're worried about that program? Give me a break. Anyway, so now I'm off my soapbox again. So I shouldn't have talked about it. I got all riled up. I was 10 minutes of nonsense. I apologize. Go read my column, though. I'm much more succinct than that.
5 teams in the SEC have not played in the SEC championship game.
Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Ole Miss.
Correct.
Arkansas has. Mississippi State has.
This is tricky.
Texas and Oklahoma.
No, Texas played this past year, big dog.
So
Oklahoma. You're close,
Oklahoma.
though. Texas A&M.
Oh, yeah, there you go. All right. So, yeah. But, hey, those trophy cases, especially like A&M's and Ole Misses, they haven't added a real trophy that matters. A&M since The Wizard of Oz was in theaters, and that's the truth, folks. 1939 was their national championship, and Wizard of Oz was in theaters. Or maybe it was Citizen Kane. One of those two. But, yeah, let's bow down to that conference and all those teams because they meant so much to the fabric of this sport that I feel bad that Ole Miss, they've just done, what they did, in the 80s and 90s to really bring this sport into popularity, and then they don't get a fair crack at it in 2024. What are we doing, Aslan?
I don't know.
I mean, all they did was lose to Kentucky at home.
Everybody keeps bringing that up, and I think the Florida game is
you hate that one. Yeah.
It's infinitely unforgivable because you had a bye. You had 2 weeks. You're at home. You just need to win 2 more football games, man. Don't mess it up. And
they knew what they were playing. They also knew what they were playing
and listen,
for.
I love Lane Kiffin more than the average man.
Yeah.
Dude, Jackson Dart melted down in a way that, like, it was Kevin Jennings-esque in the swamp. And he did the same thing in the end of the game against Kentucky, man. So there was not a lot to go on that made you think that Ole Miss was going to rise to the occasion, or at least Jackson Dart was going to rise to the occasion. Alabama, somebody was saying, I should have fact-checked before I came on the podcast, so don't share this with everybody else and say that you heard on this podcast, everybody. But I think the Rosillo podcast I was listening to, Oklahoma, did not beat an FBS team for a month and a half until they beat Alabama at the end of the season. That was a horrible loss for Alabama.
Yeah.
see the lowest point total since Saban had showed up. I mean, horrible losses against either like really poor teams or in really tough spots where you cannot lose. Like, listen, Miami end up being out of the playoff because they lost 2 out of their last 3 games. So like Ole Miss, you kind of fall into that same thing. You cannot lose a game that late in November and think you're going to get in. Same thing with Alabama. I don't know. By the way, ACC 0-4 right now in bowls, unfortunately.
Yeah, that was a bad loss by Pitt. I mean, golly, you got the ball at the 1 yard line, 1 yard to go get the win, and you kick a field goal. That's just golly, Narduzzi, get it together. Yeah, man, and that's just it. Like, look, Miami had 2 losses that came down to literally like the final minute of the game before they were losses, right? Now, they also won 3 games in the final minute, so nobody feels sorry for Miami, certainly not listening to this show.
No.
But like, that's the – Ole Miss could have lost twice, and they'd have been in. All they had to do was beat Florida.
Yeah, there's consequences. I'm just saying there's consequences to actions.
Yeah, but also they get the benefit of the doubt. They get an extra loss. Miami couldn't afford 2 losses. Clearly, they're not in. Ole Miss could have afforded 2 losses. So could have Alabama. But that's the beauty. You get an extra loss to play with when you're in the SEC. You shouldn't get an extra 4 losses. But I promise you, in the whole point of the column that I had that came up, I think it ran on Christmas Eve, was that wait till next year, man. This was all greasing the wheels. So next year there will be 6 SEC teams in. And they'll be like, look, do you want any more? You don't want any more Indiana Notre Dame games or SMU Penn State games. You don't want any of that. Who wants to watch that? And that's what this last weekend did, is it set the stage for them to start doing that. Where if you don't win your conference, sorry, if you finish second in your conference, that spot in the playoff is going to the team that finished 5th or 6th in the SEC. That's what they're going to do, even with 4 losses. Definitely with 3. A 3-loss SEC team is absolutely getting in next year.
Well, actually, I was going to make us make our college football playoff picks, but I think we're actually going to do a show before they start doing this stuff again, because we'll be doing a show for you folks on Monday, so we'll talk about the bracket at that point. Texas, Arizona State, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Boise State, Notre Dame, Georgia.
I will say this.
Cool.
I do agree that I don't think the conference champions should get a bye.
Yeah,
I think it's crazy that
ridiculous.
Arizona State didn't have to play.
It's ridiculous that Boise State,
Yes, correct. That's dumb. It's dumb. So they should all have been treated like Clemson. Like, you know what I mean? Like Clemson had to go on the road to a good team. I mean, I'm not saying they all should have to be on the road, but I'm like, Arizona State didn't need to sit out and get a bye. Come on, man. That's dumb. They shouldn't do that. I'm all for them reseeding and getting rid of the conference champions getting automatic buys.
Actually, I don't even know how it could have looked if they would have seeded it, properly or whatever. Then maybe SMU doesn't get a bad draw against Penn State on the road. But it's maybe Clemson, because maybe Clemson might have been able to beat 10 other teams in the playoff that night, but they had to go to Austin and play a really good Texas team. So I mean, the way all the seeding worked, although I'm not going to complain over that. I mean, they got in with 3 losses and. Is what it is. But I'm
it's like,
a little nervous about Klubnik. Klubnik might be really good.
Yeah, he looked pretty good. But that's what I'm saying, man, is like, who knows? Like, let's start looking at college. Like, Kirk Herbstreit's like, they need to get the best teams to come into the field. Well, who are they? How do you know, Kirk, who's the best team? As far as I can tell, every college, let's say Oregon, who's number 2? Oregon's deserving of being the number 1 team in the country.
Georgia's 2.
Okay, and Georgia got beat not all that competitively by Ole Miss. Like, the point being, they're flawed, very flawed, especially now without a starting quarterback. They're very flawed. They can be beat and let's say Georgia's 2, and let's say Ohio State's 3, from 4 to 30. Man, any of those teams can beat each other. Maybe Texas. Texas is pretty darn good too. Yeah. So let's say from 5 to 30, any of those teams can beat each other. Any of them. You know what I mean? Like if you're at full strength.
Texas 5. Yeah.
But I'm saying, like, if we put that, so it's who are you to say who deserves to be number 12 and who deserves to be 13th? Because I can make an argument that 13 is better than 6, and it's mind-boggling that they act like there is some mathematical formula they're not using to pick the best. If you're not going to use losses as a dictation for who gets into the playoff, then literally just talk to Mel Kiper. Let him tell you who the best player, who has the most draft prospects, although he doesn't know anything in December, and then go from there, because it's just crazy to think that losses don't matter. Anyway, I'm done. I'm going to go eat pizza and get ready for some more bowl probably some more bowl games here on this wonderful Thursday night.
You folks do the same, but make sure you mix warchant.com into your appetite, I was going to say, but that's not the word I want to look. Your diet. That's the word I want to look for.
There you go.
Unbelievable. Take a few days off. This is what happens. We're not going to take any more days off, Corey. We're back at it.
Can't wait.
We'll be back with a Monday show for you folks. Not sure how next week is going to look laid out because of the whole New Year's Eve thing again, but we'll be doing shows at some point. Subscribe, obviously, because that way you'll know when a show drops. Cameron show, 1 to 4 o'clock, question mark?
I don't know, buddy. I don't know. We'll see.
You folks check it out. He's Corey Maslon. Check out warchant.com. Thank you for listening to Wake Up Warchant, presented by Vitamin Energy, vitaminenergy.com. Sip the juice.